Peter, thank you so much yet again, for offering me some time to throw some questions at you. And this is all in aid of preparing for CRMSS Ontario 2024, which is the Canadian Renaissance Music Summer Schools, the Ontario course that I run. There are 2 courses next year, but the one that you're going to be at is the Ontario course in May. I have interviewed you in various different places around the world, but yet today we're somewhere much more familiar.
We are in my sitting room.
Indeed.
Here is my harpsichord, which I never play.
Great, very good. Thank you again. And the most exciting news, which everyone should already know, is that you were going to be guest artist at CRMSS Ontario 2024, and that we're doing a very large, very impressive piece, Tallis's Spem and alium. But before we get to talk about that, not last weekend, but the weekend before, there was a very important moment for you and the Tallis Scholars. What happened on the 3rd of November?
Yes, it was. It was to the day, the anniversary of our first ever concert, which was on the 3rd of November 1973.
Very, very good.
50 years.
50 years. So you have been running the Tallis Scholars for 50 years.
Yes.
And that is without getting too personal, a sizable portion of your entire life. And I think it's fascinating to imagine a life lived dedicated to Renaissance polyphonic music in such a specific and full way. When you were a student, did you know then, or did you want to, at that point, dedicate yourself so completely to this kind of Renaissance polyphonic music?
Yes, I think so. I loved Bach. I loved counterpoint. I was an organist originally, not a very good one, but I had an organ scholarship, and I loved playing Bach, and I loved hearing Bach, and that was my sort of music, counterpoint, polyphony, counterpoint. But I became aware very quickly that everyone was doing Bach. In 1973, Bach was a little bit new on the scene, actually. Monteverdi was very new on the scene. Yeah. But Bach was coming up nicely, and everyone was doing it. Yeah. And I thought, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing, so what can I do? And at the same time, I fell in love with this sound. Right. As a 19-year-old, I got a sound in my head, an ideal of beauty, I call it, which became obsessive. I obsessed over it, and I've carried on just trying to find that sound always. It's a sound that's completely logged in my head. Yeah. So this has subsequently become known as the Tallis Scholars sound, which is something that has been discussed and ink spilt over and all these sorts of things. Can you tell us more specifically, maybe, what it is that characterizes that sound and why you believe that sound serve Renaissance polyphonic music as well as it does? Well, it could have served all sorts of music that required clarity in the texture, and counterpoint tends to need that. Yeah. So, I could have applied it to Bach, of course, and to romantic music. And I have applied it to modern music, especially to composers who get it. Yeah, yeah. whose music can fit in nicely with a program of Renaissance music. And I'm thinking particularly of Arvo Pärt here. Yeah. It just fits naturally in. And you want the same sound, you want that clarity. It's a very clear sound where you can hear the detail. Yeah. People misunderstand polyphony sometimes by thinking it's basically chords. Right. And they're very boring chords. Yeah. The interest is in the part writing. Yeah. And of course with Tallis's Spem and alium we come to the biggest of all, the really big one. Yeah, yeah. For me, one of the most important things about Renaissance polyphonic music, and something that I try and tell people that I work with, is the relationship between the rhythmic character of polyphonic music and the linear sort of forward character of it, because the way that counterpoint works
I think, is as a total marriage of these two things, because you have individual lines that have to line up. What's your relationship with the integrity of the rhythm? Or is that something you think about? Is that something that is important to your conception of the sound?
Yes, it's crucially that the parts need to be aligned as well as possible.
Yeah.
You don't want chords that go clunk all the time.
Yeah.
Or the basses tend to be late.
Never. I refuse.
Yeah, right. That's what you don't want.
Yeah.
So the rhythm applies all the time, but as you know, there's not that much catchy rhythm in this music, unless you're doing madrigals, which I don't do. So we're talking about long legato lines, beautifully melodic all the way through, and everyone has to sing them in perfect cohesion. And I think that's where the rhythm is very important.
Yeah. So this sound that you had as a teenager and presumably sort of, as you say, did you say became obsessed by it?
Yes. I'm still obsessed by it.
Still obsessed by it.
50 years later.
So
and if I may go on, I tried to find it not only with English singers like you and the best of that there is, but I also try to find it with what we call foreign groups or amateur groups or other groups anyway. And I still try to find it.
Yeah. Do you so this sound, as we know, it's now been going for 50 years, which now puts it in this kind of status of not only one of the leading groups, but one of the most established, and there's a weight of what you have accomplished.
Well, I don't know whether people are interested in numbers, but let me just show off for a moment.
Please do.
That concert last week, which celebrated the anniversary, was our 2,522nd concert ever.
Good. Wow.
And we've made 61 discs, I think.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Did you always have the ambition to travel as much as you do, and to be an ambassador, or to be at the forefront of making the case internationally for this kind of music? Was that considerable amount of, I would say, maybe fire or commitment or passion, was that in you at the start, or was this all sort of extraordinarily fortuitous, like kind of, oh wow, that's amazing? What?
No, I think I had it right from the start. Right. I actually, at school, I dragooned some of my colleagues into singing a motet by Victoria, O Magna Mysterium.
Yeah.
That was my first ever conducting job.
Oh, good.
Which we did it from memory. So just looking at it a long time ago, I can't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I was clearly thinking along exactly these lines.
Yeah. So after that concert 50 years ago, you were still a student. Did things sort of become quite regular at that point? And more interestingly, maybe, when did you begin to realize that this thing really had legs?
When we were undergraduates, we just went from concert to concert. I mean, I tried to put on quite a lot of concerts even then.
Yeah.
And we went from one to the next. It didn't. I had amateurs who were good singers.
Yeah.
But I was in Oxford, and there were good singers around also, and so it gradually formed.
Yeah.
But it didn't really. It really took off in 1987.
Okay.
When we won the Gramophone Record of the Year award.
Right.
With a disc of Josquin.
Gramophone being the
Gramophone magazine.
The main classical music, the most prestigious classical music magazine in the UK, certainly, and if not the world.
Celebrating its 100th anniversary this year.
Oh, right. Oh, I didn't realise that. Oh, very good.
We're talking about 23 here,
right.
Not 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Gramophone magazine recognised your recording.
Yeah, it was an astonishing thing. I mean, we had the editor actually at our celebration last week talking about it on camera.
Right.
Because he was duly... I mean, it made a big difference to them, actually.
Right.
That we had collectively changed the listening habits of classical music lovers.
Right.
Because nothing like this had ever happened before.
How so? What sort of listening habits were changed?
Well, he mentioned the disc that had won that Gramophone Record of the Year just previously. It was Carrie Ann conducting Beethoven.
Okay.
It was Claudio Bardo conducting, I think, Puccini.
Okay.
And Macaris conducting an opera. So that was the sort of thing that won.
Yeah.
And then suddenly
Yeah.
the Tallis Scholars singing Josquin.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knew us or Josquin.
Right.
Basically.
So at that time, that was quite a big departure from what you had been used to. That was a big moment.
Yes. It was more or less our first disc, not quite.
Yeah.
So we were really lucky,
That's
I suppose.
fantastic.
Yes, it was.
I didn't realise that. That's really interesting. And so from there on, were you? I'm interested in the sort of international travel side of what you do. In the late 80s, was your travel schedule already pretty robust, or did that build up?
No, it had built up during the 80s.
Right.
We went to Australia for the first time in 85.
Okay.
Which was before we won that award.
Yeah.
So we were up and running. Obviously, we'd become a feature on the scene, and people were prepared to spend money on us.
Yeah.
And we very quickly actually became what they called bankers. They could put us on and make money.
Yeah.
Because the crowds were there.
Yeah. Did you view yourself as a pioneer?
Yes. I quickly decided I had a mission, like a priest.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes. And I thought, I don't care whether I'm paid, it's my mission in life to go around the world promoting this music, because I can see that it changes people's lives for the better. Maybe subtly, but some people really go nuts for it.
I don't know any of those people.
Yes, you do.
Well, that's.
But I mean, we go to China, we go to Japan, we've been to Russia, we're not going there now, but we go there.
I want to talk about when you went to China for the first time. I mean, what was that like? I think you mentioned to me a while ago that you went and there were sort of people standing in the aisles.
Yes. It was in one of these really big concert halls in Shanghai. I think was the first concert, and we're going back there next year. In fact, so it wasn't a complete failure. The question is always whether they're still there for the second half.
Oh, right. Okay.
I mean, they can leave at the interval, you know.
Right.
And but they didn't actually, and whole families came.
Right.
I think that's what with children and grandma and the whole thing. I mean, and they started talking to each other.
Right.
But they had a great time, I think.
Yeah.
And we didn't make it easy for them. The first 10 minutes is always very awkward if you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
You have to get used to. We have to get used to them. They had to get used to us, and. After 10 minutes, I felt this was a real test, this concert, actually.
Do you remember what you programmed at the beginning of that concert?
Gibbons, oh, clap your hands.
Oh, very good.
Something like that.
Yeah.
No messing.
No, not at all.
You go in with the proper stuff.
Yeah. So you went to China and had this fantastic experience introducing a large number of people to Renaissance polyphonic music, presumably who had never heard anything like it.
And they don't get the Gramophone magazine, and they don't get the BBC, and they had very little idea what to expect.
And when was that first China trip?
Oh, 99, I think.
Okay.
Quite, yeah.
Can you pinpoint any other sort of specific moments that really stood out as interesting, markers along the path?
Well, the 85 Australia tour was absolutely crucial. I mean, that's what woke us up to the realities of long-distance touring.
Right.
And we were young and green.
Okay.
Some of us were very green. We ran out of money. We were ill. Right. We didn't understand what jet lag was, really. Right. Wow. And we were asked to do too much in the time. But there it was. I've actually got some tapes from ABC.
Okay.
And it sounds all right.
Amazing.
I know, it's amazing.
That's cool.
Anyway, we had to grow up, and we grew up on that trip, really. Right. And then we won the Gramophone Award, and then we were for a while, we were really very well launched, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the internet, we nearly did 100 concerts a year. In 92, we did very nearly 100 concerts, and 94. Right. Then at least, things don't last like that. Yeah. And we just got us, we were established, but and then we've come bouncing back recently. Yeah.
I wonder whether we might speak a little bit more about the music itself. I'm keen to tell people that the Renaissance lasted for at least 150 years or so.
I give it nearly 200 actually, because it went on so long in the Spanish world.
Yeah, and that there's a huge breadth of this kind of music. Can you tell us, for instance, what differentiates in your mind Gibbons from Isaac or something like that? Just kind of take us through the breadth of the different styles and how they feel to you. You're a man who's on the inside of this music like few other people are.
Well, the difference between Isaac and Gibbons is that the similarity, obviously, is that they're writing for unaccompanied voices. At least we assume they are. I won't get into that one. I mean, Isaac might have had instruments, but that's the only thing really in common. I mean, Isaac set chant.
Yeah.
Gibbons was an Anglican and did not.
Right.
And Gibbons didn't write anything in Latin. Yeah. Whereas Isaac only wrote in Latin, except, of course, for his very famous secular music. Yeah. But it's also the way he structures his sound. Equally interesting is the difference in Isaac and Josquin, because they were contemporaries and they sound completely different. Yeah. Their compositional method is quite different. Even more different with Gibbons, of course. So it's easy to sort of think it's all a bit similar, but it really isn't. Yeah, well, I mean, I agree completely. One of the things that we try and do on these courses is to introduce people who, again, love Renaissance music, but may have only come at it from one particular point of view, and we're trying desperately to open that up and to show people that in the Renaissance, the music culture was as vivid and varied as any other music culture is at any other time. There were a bunch of human beings around and they were making music. Let's talk a little bit about Spem. Oh yes. Because that's the big deal next year. It's a big deal every year. Well, indeed. I mean, let me just say that when we started in '73, performances of Spem were so rare that when there was one put on at any level of expertise, people would come from all over the world to hear it. It was a very famous piece, but people didn't dare perform it. It was almost like it was thought in the 19th century that it was a sort of, or the 18th century actually, it was a sort of monument that wasn't meant to be performed. Okay. Yeah, it was impossible to perform it. Right. It was like looking at Roman, the Colosseum. Yeah. And no one actually used this thing. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. So untouchable. Yes, it was a real dare. Yeah. To put it on, and it still is. I mean, I think it's probably the most difficult piece in the repertoire. Right. So much can go wrong. Yeah. And if it does, the problem with it is that people can't hear each other across the spectrum of all those voices, 40 voices, and at least 40 singers, probably more. One hopes not less. And you can't get it right again. It goes out, and the conductor is buried under a huge building. Yes, yeah. Well, I fear that. Tell me a little bit about that. When it's going well, I mean, it must feel different from a normal, or I say normal, a smaller. Well, bits of it sound like normal because they're not all scored for 40 parts. Yeah. It's the 40-part sections, or the 20-part, if you like, that are the completely new sound world, really. Yeah. Well, it's so dense that you can't really hear it. It's an amazing weight of sound. You can't analyse it. Yeah. But remember that quite a lot of Spem was 5-part choirs that join with each other, and then they drop out. So it's not much more than 10 voices, quite a lot of the time. Yeah. And those you can shape in a normally Renaissance way. Yeah. They're phrases with shapes, and I'll try and bring this out when we do it. Yeah. Is there much historical information on the first performance of it, or the genesis of the piece, or when was it? Wasn't it performed in 1572? Well, it's thought that it was performed on Elizabeth's 40th birthday. Ah. Unfortunately, it could also have been performed on Mary's 40th birthday, because they were both on the throne when they were 40.
Right, okay.
But I think Elizabeth's take is the favourite.
Yeah.
And it was probably performed in None Such Palace,
Yeah.
which had towers with 8 sides.
Okay.
2 towers.
Oh, clever.
And it would have been in one of those towers that you put your choirs, the 8 of them, in one of these. It was an octagon, I suppose.
Yeah.
And Tallis would have stood in the middle.
Whirled around.
I suppose so.
Rotating.
I mean, I have done this, and it's very unsatisfactory.
Doing it in a circle?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I don't recommend we do that.
No, I don't think we're going to do it. I think what we're going to do is, there's a big church with a balcony in it, so they're going to be up in a big balcony.
All of them?
I hope so, yeah.
I've also done it in Spain recently with a university choir. They were really good in Barcelona, with half of them down and half of them up.
Okay.
So they were quite well spaced. They couldn't see each other or hear each other probably, but they could all see me quite clearly. We
already spoke about numbers a little bit. So how many times have you conducted? Many times have you conducted?
I looked on
alium?
the Tallis Scholars database, and I've conducted it in concert 68 times. But in those concerts, I may have done it twice, which the database doesn't pick up. Yeah. And then I've done it with other groups.
Okay.
Professional groups also, and it still goes wrong.
Yeah.
I wonder whether I've ever conducted a note-perfect version of it. The latest ones, the ones we did just this summer, I thought that was definitely better than anything I'd ever heard before.
Oh, right. Oh,
you were in it, weren't you?
I was, yeah. Those were cool.
Yeah, they were very cool.
Yeah. From the perspective of a singer, it's a sort of piece that, especially if you're not in choir 1, because if you're in choir 1, then there's a bit of heart racing at the beginning. But if you're not doing that, then that's fine, and you just sort of count and come in. And once you get over the counting and the difficulty of it and all that kind of stuff, it's sort of when I sing Renaissance polyphony, I feel one of the things that's most exciting about it is the extent to which I can individually feel as though I'm contributing to this collaborative thing. And in Spem, because there's so much activity going on, and it's this enormous, as you say, in the 40-part bits.
Well,
it's this huge, immense creation that you're kind of riding along with.
Yes, it sort of rolls along.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely thrilling when it's going well.
Yeah.
And you feel it's not going to go wrong, and that people are actually interpreting these lines.
Yeah.
You won't make much impression on the 40-part sections, but you could certainly ruin the 10-part sections if you came in the wrong place.
Yeah.
All that kind of thing.
Well, I have been digging into Spem with some degree of commitment recently, because I've developed this idea as a fundraiser for Crumbs, that in the same way that people have long been able to buy, for instance, an organ pipe to help with the restoration of an organ, as a way of encouraging people to donate to the Canadian Renaissance Music Summer Schools, I have developed a method whereby people can buy a bar of Spem and alium. So there are 5,520 bars, 138 bars times 40 parts.
So it's part related.
Yes, and the other thing I've learned is how many empty bars there are. There are hundreds of empty
there
bars.
would be.
So I've built a website, and people can go and they can look at a full score, and they can hear a recording, and then they can also look at individual choirs, individual parts, and I've also chosen some kind of best bits, little collections of bars and moments. And
they can buy a bit.
And they can buy a bit.
Is it a package?
Well, they can buy whatever they want. They can buy individual bars, they can buy entire choirs.
How much is a bar?
A full bar is $5, and an empty bar is $2.
Why would anyone buy an empty bar?
One doesn't ask these questions.
I know, you just get on with it.
I mean, do you have a favourite bit?
Do I have a favourite bit? No, I think it's all, well, I love the big chord change at Respice.
Yeah.
And I love the beginning of the last section, the last 40-part section, where the trebles, the two treble parts will sort of hang there very high in the texture. And if you just, it's just a lovely thing to do if it works.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to buy the opening.
Okay.
I'd like to buy choir 1 for the first, until they're all in. They're all in by bar 10, I think.
Great. That's amazing. Peter, thank you so much. You've been hugely supportive of Crumbs since it was going.
Wonderful initiative.
And very generous with your time and effort. And coming to be with us.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it very much. And my son may come as well.
Well, I think I was actually working with him last week.
Oh, you were?
And he is definitely going to be there.
Yeah, well, he's just got a passport, I happen to know.
He just got one?
Yeah, not his first, but it was out of date.
Okay, well...
with a baby picture in it.
Oh, good. Well, all of those are necessary things.
Now he's grown up.
Yeah. Thank you so much indeed.
Great pleasure.
And see you in May. Very good. Thank you.